You're listening to the free version of the Patreon Party People podcast, which is released 1 month after it goes up for Patreon donors. If you want to stay up to date with the latest podcasts as soon as they are released, just visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog and pledge $1 or more. Now you might ask yourself, who would pay for a podcast? And you know what? Fair enough. I am but a single person, and doing all of this stuff, that means writing scripts, capturing footage, editing video, it all takes a lot of time and effort. And that's just one thing out of many creative pursuits that also take a lot of effort to produce. So don't think of Patreon as paying for a podcast. It's about giving me the security to keep providing you with more great stuff in the future. Plus, if you donate, you'll also get sneak peeks into whatever upcoming projects I'm working on, like work-in-progress versions of videos or beta builds of games I'm developing. Don't have a Patreon account? That's fine. You'll also find links to Ko-fi, PayPal, and even Amazon wishlists. Just visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog to learn more. One more time, that's patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Hello and welcome to the Patreon Party People podcast. It is June the 11th, 2020, and if I don't record this right now, it's going to be another week before this gets produced, because I just found out, like, a few hours ago. By the way, hello, I'm the host, Ryan Bloom, but I just found out, like, we'll say 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago, that I am house sitting again, like day after tomorrow. Actually, given that it's Thursday, I'm supposed to go over there on Friday, so technically it's tomorrow. You know, my days are a little mixed up right now. So it's the sort of thing where if I don't record this podcast right this instant, I won't be able to record it until I get home. And I won't be getting home until, like, Thursday morning next week. So I have to record this right here, right now. We missed the podcast in May. That's kind of a bummer, certainly. But you know, there's a lot of real stressful things going on in the world right now. I find myself like staying off of social media a lot more, because, you know, every day it kind of feels like a new nightmare in a lot of ways. Normally I think of myself as kind of like a tough person when it comes to dealing with that kind of stuff. You know, I've been on the internet for a really long time. You wouldn't think so, but I've seen, you know, the really, like, nasty stuff. To some degree, I feel sort of numb to the internet in a sense. And even me, it kind of gets to me a little bit. More than a little bit, I should say. There was a night, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, where I just decided to stop using Twitter for the rest of the night. And I didn't use it until, you know, like 24 hours later, because I couldn't sit around and watch any more videos of cops beating up people and, you know, all that other, like, just really terrible stuff that's going on in the world right now. If you're a protester, if you're out there fighting the good fight, keep it on, keep doing it, keep fighting for justice. Changes are being made slowly, I see. You know, there's talk that Minneapolis is thinking about, you know, defunding the police, maybe even disbanding the police. You know, people are tearing down, like, statues of Confederate icons all over the country. You know, it's real hard out there for a lot of people right now. I've made, you know, donations to places where I could afford it. I urge you to do the same. This is a time of great change, and we need to have it change in favor of the people who deserve it. But that's probably all I'm going to talk about this right now on this podcast. It's 24/7 out there right now. You're getting it from all directions. You don't need me to tell you that you need to care about other people, even though if you don't, you need to care about other people. I don't know how to explain to you that you need to care about other people. But oh gosh, what else has happened in the last month and a half? I got fired from TSSZ. Technically everybody got fired from TSSZ because Tristan decided to shut down the website permanently, forever. I'm probably not really allowed to talk super inside baseball about that. But from the outside, you know, the timeline of events was that he made a few, call them awkward tweets. You know, when all the protests first started coming down, like real, you know, all the riots and things like that, he was, retweeting in support of people that were, rioting and protesting and everything else. And obviously, people got on his case about that, about, oh, you're a Sega news site. Why are you being so political? And, probably should ignore people like that. We had a platform at TSSE, and I think Tristan was trying to use it for some good. I think he does that often, or he did that often. But someone mentioned, like in the replies to that, oh, if Sonic the Hedgehog was a real person, then, he would be out there protesting, he would be out there rioting. And Tristan kind of latched onto that and started, tweeting like how the plots of Sonic Forces and Sonic Adventure 2 are an allegory for the times we're in right now. And it was definitely a little embarrassing. And like I said, from the outside perspective, it looks like he made those tweets and then literally the next day he shut down the website. And you can draw like a cause and effect there. And there definitely is like some cause and effect there. But at the same time, there have been things going on behind the scenes at TSSC News, some of which we, the staff at TSSC, didn't even know about, that also contributed to this shutdown. I think it's fair to say that in some regards, the website was past its prime a little bit. None of us were getting any younger, Tristan especially. I think he's probably around the same age I am, maybe 1 year older. So, I'll say this one thing. He said, he doesn't want to be doing this when he's 40. Running a Sonic fan site or a Sonic news site, as it were. So he just made an executive decision to close the place down. Because, things were long in the tooth. He wanted to move on. He could have very well, it would have been really nice if he'd clued us into more of what was going on behind the scenes, before just kind of, dumping us in an alleyway one night. But, on some level, that's life, Sometimes you don't get your graceful closure. You just get, dumped in an alley in the middle of the night. It is what it is. I'm lucky enough that the money I was paid for writing for TSSE was actually, less than I get from Patreon and YouTube currently. It was really nice, when I'd hit like those lean YouTube months where nothing was really going on there, or when, the Patreon was kind of flagging a little bit. It was nice to have that TSSC money to fall back on. And, obviously I was getting, free games through TSSC. Sega would send us review copies, a little too many review copies as of late. But, that's kind of how I stayed up to date on the latest releases, is that, I justified everything as being for my job. What Sega did not send us, we bought for ourselves, and I would expense it. I bought Final Fantasy VII Remake with the intent of expensing it as, as a business expense. Technically I would have gotten the game quote unquote for free. And since I did not produce that review before TSSE closed down, technically I don't think I get to expense that. So, I'm eating that a little bit. Tristan did give us, one final payment as the site, as a closing down sort of thing. So, I'm technically not out all, that $60 or whatever. I did recoup, we'll say most of it, almost all of it, in fact. But, like I said, it is what it is. I'm really going to miss that place. It really gave me like a purpose and a direction to my writing that I never had before. And I'm going to miss having that purpose and that direction going forward. But at the same time, I mentioned earlier, Sega was kind of sending us a little too many games to review. And, we've been having some trouble behind the scenes with, Lewis was leaving. I think Rybo might have left or stepped away temporarily because he had other things he had to do. So, we were actually down on staff, 2 or 3 people. So, all the review codes that were coming in were kind of coming to me exclusively. And, over the process of this closure, I've been backing up articles from TSSC, personally backing them up, just going in, because if you go to tsscnews.com right now, what you will see is the closure message. But since I'm still considered part of the staff, I can log in and the website just looks like it did the day it closed down. So I've been going through and manually saving, all my reviews, any important articles I wrote, anything else that just looked important to me. we were kind of like the number one news source for the Ken Penders lawsuit. So I went through and I saved every article about Ken Penders and about Archie Comics. And I saved, I forget, I looked at the folder once, it's something like 1,200 articles, which is a lot. But again, that's only like a fraction of what all was on TSSE. And it sounds like, there's a wider effort to archive our stories on a place called Last Minute Continue, which is a website owned by Kevin Eva, I think is how you say his last name, Eva. He used to actually work for Sega. He was a community manager for Sega of Europe. And then after he left Sega of Europe, he started this Last Minute Continue website. And I think, he does like Let's Plays there and all this other stuff. It's very similar to what TSSE was in a sense. And Tristan's been talking with Kevin about archiving all of our articles and everything on Last Minute Continue. There's been other efforts, to come in and archive all this stuff. So none of this is like going away. And it sounds like, there may even be open positions for TSSE writers at Last Minute Continue. So, maybe I'll even continue on over there, depending on if the pay is comparable or whatever. But, just rest assured, nothing important that was on TSSE is gone. I have my own saves. Tristan obviously has the whole website backed up somewhere. Kevin is getting it for Last Minute Continue. There, a couple other sites were interested. There was even like interest that maybe somebody wanted to buy out the TSSE brand entirely. Things are happening behind the scenes. Nothing is going away. Everything will be saved in one form or another. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I was really broken up like that very first day. I was very emotional. But I've come to accept it. I've thought about the things Tristan told the staff about, things going on behind the scenes, trouble he was having with various other things. And it was just, it was time. It was past its prime. Also, another reason why I didn't record the podcast in May, I developed like this weird sort of like mouth infection. I don't know how to explain it. Technically, it started probably back like late March. I brushed my teeth and like I got this sore feeling on my tongue. And eventually it moved like under my tongue, where, it got sore enough that it was like starting to affect the taste of things. And then, it started spreading to other parts of my mouth, and it was really like worrying and scary. We bought some antiseptic mouthwash to get rid of it. What I think happened regarding my mouth, when we were back in Colorado in 2015, you may remember, I don't know if I was doing the podcast at this point yet. Maybe I had either just started or I was thinking about it or something. We took a vacation out here to Nevada for like 2 weeks. Because my brother was having his wedding. And, part of the process of getting prepared for that, packing everything up was buying a travel container for my toothbrush. They're like $1 at Walmart. It's kind of like this long pill shape, probably about, 8 inches long. And you put your toothbrush in it. After we came back from Nevada, from the wedding, to, go back home to our place in Colorado, I just kept using that travel case. I liked having some place, secure to put my toothbrush so that it wasn't exposed to the air because, I share a bathroom with someone else. And, they use hairspray and they use all this other stuff that I figured, I don't need that on my toothbrush. Fast forward many, many years, that travel case started getting pretty grody and it was very difficult to clean. I knew that it was kind of a cleanliness problem for a couple years now. Every now and then I'd find, it would just look kind of nasty in certain places. And, I'd rinse it out with hot water. I'd try and scrub it the best I could with like, a paper towel or whatever. But it's really hard to like get way down in there where the toothbrush head sits. So when I started developing, this soreness in my mouth, I realized, hey, that toothbrush holder is still kind of a problem. I should probably like do the best job of deep cleaning it that I can. And I boiled up a pot of water. I threw the toothbrush in there. I threw the toothbrush holder in there, the travel case. I boiled it all up. And then I had like a utensil, like a kitchen utensil that I wrapped a paper towel around so that I could, really dig in there to the deepest end of this travel case. And when I pulled it out, it was this pinkish, orangish color. And if you don't know what that means, that's bacteria. That's like, if you've ever had pets and you notice like this pinkish slime, yes, slime, floating around in the bottom of your pet dish, that's bacteria. That's from their mouth. And near as I can tell, having that bacteria, my toothbrush was effectively just swimming in that for, who knows how many months, how many years that's been. Just really, really unsanitary. So once I did that, I threw the old toothbrush away. I threw the travel case away. I bought fresh everything. We got antiseptic mouthwash. I've been using that for the last week. In fact, last night was the last day I could use it because it says do not use for more than 7 days. And that's because that stuff is rough. The ingredients are incredibly simple. It's like peroxide, alcohol, and salt. That's all it is. And all three of those things are to kill bacteria in your mouth. And every night I would use it because you're supposed to swish it around in your mouth for 60 seconds. So, you pour the 10 milliliters in the cap or whatever. You dump that in your mouth and you count to 60. And there were some days where it was a struggle to keep it in there for the full 60 seconds because it was just like putting fire in your mouth, let's say. And, maybe that means it was working. I suppose we'll find out. A lot of it did clear up. I was getting like these weird like white marks on the tip of my tongue. I probably shouldn't even be talking about it. And, I have anxiety problems about this kind of stuff anyway. So, I was super panicking about it. What if it's signs of a more serious problem? Can't really think about that right now, but depending on whether or not it comes back, maybe I'll start thinking about going to a doctor about this. Cause if you don't know, I have like real rough mouth stuff in general. Bad teeth kind of run in my family a little bit. My mom got her first dentures when she was 19. I almost knocked my 2 front teeth out when I was like 11 years old. I never went to see a dentist for that. But I have, some crooked teeth as a result. Just a real bad scene in general. Take care of your mouths, folks. I learned that long time ago. But at some point, it's also just like it's fate that something is going to go wrong with my mouth at some point. And I don't like talking about this because, the few times I've been on video, I get self-conscious about the way my teeth look. So, try not to point and laugh, I guess. Anyway, that was just the reasons why the podcast was late. Since the last podcast, I've been trying to plug away at the things I was talking about last month. I did work on Bubsy a little bit more, but it was May then, it's June now. The moment has kind of passed on that game, and it's a little hard to stay focused on it. It's also a little hard to stay focused because on top of everything else, we're probably going to be moving soon. I'd rather not move in the middle of a pandemic, but it's kind of not really our choice. We got a notice on our door sometime early May that a new company bought the apartment complex, a company in like California. And what they want to do is effectively refurbish the entire complex. And this is a pretty big complex. I guess a few years before we moved in, it actually used to be 2 separate complexes. And then one company bought both of them out and combined them. So, like probably 200 to 300 to maybe even 400 or 500 people live here. We are practically the size of a small town. We have 2 swimming pools, we have like 10 different laundry rooms. It is just absolutely insane. We have like, those campgrounds, how they'll have like little grilling stations. We have some of those, but only on one side of the apartment complex. It is nuts how big this place is. We have like 3 different playgrounds for kids. I mean, that's, this is a huge place. And because it's so big, the company that owns the apartment complex now is actually seeking financial aid from the government to get this approved. And, they said that there will be more information on that in like September. That's how far out this is that, we got this in May and they're saying, we'll hold a town hall in September where you'll be able to ask us questions. And I think the plan is that they want this to be done probably around December or November, somewhere around there. And, what that entails is that essentially they'll displace us for almost 2 weeks, which from the original sound of it meant that they would move us into like a temporary apartment and that they would pay all the moving expenses for that. Now it just kind of sounds like maybe we'll be on our own for like 10 or 12 days or something. We'll be able to keep our beds in our apartment. We'll be able to sleep in our apartments at night. But they'll take almost everything out of them. So, shelves, the computer, dressers, all that stuff that contains our clothes, electronics, everything but the beds. And I think they said one TV. And I think from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., we'll have to be out of the apartment. And then, at 10 p.m., we'll be able to re-enter the apartment and sleep. And it just all sounds like a big nightmare. They did say, like I said, the original plan, they said they were going to, pay for the expenses of moving all this stuff. I don't really understand that. Again, I suppose all of this would be answered in September. But we wanted to take that as our cue to finally get out of here. We didn't want to stay in this apartment too long. This was kind of just, because if you remember, when we moved out here, there was a housing shortage. This was kind of the first place that became available to us. And it was after like 4 or 5 months of looking for an apartment. So this was really just a place for us to stay for a little while until we found someplace better. And we've been here almost 3 years at this point. So, this is a good sign that maybe we need to pack up and get out of here and find someplace better, which we should be doing soon. So, we'll be moving maybe by the end of this year, maybe by fall, I would hope. And that's crazy. Last month I mentioned I was writing sort of a rough draft fan fiction for a Sonic the Hedgehog movie sequel. Sort of just, like spitballing various ideas just because, I had thoughts on places to take that story. And, I'm almost done with that. I'm kind of writing up the final act, the final encounter. It feels like it should like go super quick because, it's like a rough draft. It's not like every single scene broken out like a real movie is. It's kind of like a basic gist of events, maybe a couple lines of dialogue here and there. And some places the writing is more compact than other places. So, that's just kind of how it goes. But even at that point, even just this like really rough draft is what I'm starting to call it. I think it's up to like 13 pages long when, most of my video review scripts, even the longest ones are like 7 or 8 or 9 pages. So, this is actually, for me, it's a pretty lengthy writing exercise. Hopefully that'll be done soon. I can't really give an ETA on it. Because, it started out as a project of inspiration and it's kind of remained that. So it's whenever I have like a good idea to continue writing it is at the point it's at. Maybe I should, force myself to wrap it up so that, I can get you guys something to read, especially because, Paramount actually announced a real sequel to the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And I'd like to see how my fake rough draft script thingy, eventually stacks up to the real thing. In my never-ending list of ideas I've suggested on this podcast and then immediately forgotten, something else I've been thinking of lately is upgrading my Google Drive storage. I currently pay $2 a month for 200 gigabytes of storage, but I'm like 75% full there. And the next step up from that $2 is 2 terabytes of storage for $10. And the reason that I'm thinking about all of this is because I kind of want to start like archiving all my old videos in their like original source quality. I actually have a bunch of videos already up on my Google Drive. A lot of the really oldest stuff, the really, tiny files, tiny resolutions, things like that. And now that I'm getting like into the newer stuff, that's where I need a lot of storage space. I ended up, parsing it out, looking to see, just to back up all of Dare to Scare would be 75 gigabytes. And I think I have like 40 gigabytes free on my Google Drive. And obviously if I back all of this stuff up, I could start providing links to you guys. I could actually probably start doing that already with these really old videos. But again, like that creates a new problem. Like with the newer videos, they're just MP4 files. Those will play on anything. But you get far enough back and we start getting into AVI files, which means, you there at home would have to have like the right playback codecs in order to play those video files, especially like the really, 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 really old stuff. We're talking like my Jurassic Park Trespasser video, because I encoded that with a really obscure codec called Camtasia Studio. And, there are ways that you can install the Camtasia codec nowadays. I think if you install the K-Lite codec pack, you'll get the Camtasia codec in there. But, that's just weird and complex, and I don't know how I'd handle that. If you're a patron, if you pay for money for this podcast, or if you donate money to me, oh my gosh. Oh, it's 6:45 in the morning, and I've been up all night. If you donate money to this podcast, and you have any input on this matter, let me know. Maybe I'll start providing links to that soon. Maybe I won't. This is where I'd written in my notes to talk about my G-Lock Air Battle review for TSSC News. I also did a Thunder Force AC review for TSSC News. You cannot read those currently because TSSC News is down permanently. One of the reasons I went through and I saved all my reviews is because I eventually want to get all that stuff archived on bltn.net. I really need to get on to like fixing that website up a little bit. Maybe install like a new Tumblr theme to make it, a little bit fresher, a little more readable. Add contact info, start queuing up older reviews to go up on that website, things like that. I was also, when TSSC closed down, I was in the middle of writing a Streets of Rage 4 review. And I was obviously in the middle of reviewing Final Fantasy VII Remake. Both of those reviews will now go up on tsscnews.com, or both of those reviews will now go up on bltn.net, I suppose. But I just haven't really had the energy to finish up my Streets of Rage 4 review, and we'll talk more about Final Fantasy VII Remake in the second half of this podcast. Something else I've been thinking of, my cousin brought it up with me, and I've been thinking about it on and off over the last few months. Anyway, starting up like a patron-only Discord, just some place for you guys to have a direct line to me, to talk to me whenever you feel like it. It would also be like a really easy place for me to do quick, easy, off-the-cuff streams, things like that. Let me know if that's something that interests you. I feel like I idle in a lot of Discords these days, so I don't know if the world really needs another one. But, if I ever like stream more on Twitch, that could be, we could get like Twitch emotes in the Discord. We could do all kinds of weird stuff. Let me know how it strikes you, and we'll see what's up. But I think that is the super quick rundown for the first half of this podcast. When we come back, it will be a lot of stuff. Also, again, check out Cutlery. It looks like a fun video game. They're out there tweeting fun stuff, fun videos, fun previews. Actually, here, let me look it up live on the podcast. Whoops, that's not how you spell. Well, Cultury? No, that's not. Cutlery. No, not an E. Oh my gosh, how do you spell this? Cutlery. Yes, there we go. I found it. I'm good. Let's see. What video is the last video they tweeted of this game? June 3rd. So, look it up on Twitter, Cutlery. That is PSYCUTLERY. Twitter.com, Cutlery. And then cutlery.eyesandeverything.com. There will be links in the show notes to this stuff. Actually, it looks like it's eyesandeverything.com now. It's not even cutlery.eyesandeverything.com. That's a lot easier to remember. So just go to eyesandeverything.com and you'll find it. And you'll find other things like artwork and all sorts of fun in the California sun. I don't know if they live in California. Anyway, we'll go on break now. We'll come back. We'll talk about, movies, TV shows, video games. I saw Scoob. Rick and Morty's over. Been playing so many video games. That's probably where the bulk of this podcast is going to be. So stay tuned for that right after this break music.
Old school computer, making old school rhymes. Binary, don't cry for me, age like a fine wine. Interface, with a face the music, play it right, yelled it out. Voice comes from the inside. You've never seen me, but I'm there, online for all to see. Deep within the archives, shareware, a CD. The music goes unsung, the lyrics fade to dust. But as long as I am running, I'll keep saying what I must. It's Chex Quest, Windows 95. It's Chex Quest, for now I am alive. It's Chex Quest, Windows 95. It's Chex Quest, for now I am alive.
And we're back. It was just a short little break for me. Sometimes these breaks, I'll take like a day or 10 hours between recording sessions, but I kind of want to get this done real quick, because I don't want this to be the sort of podcast where I'm editing it while I'm house sitting or anything like that. So we're going to dive right in here, right into the deep end, as it were. I have been playing so many games. I have been watching so many movies and everything else. It's kind of insane in a way. I guess it's just, shutting out the world, trying not to pay attention to what a horrible nightmare everything is out there right now. Some friends and I group streamed the new Scooby-Doo movie, Scoob, which, my review for Scoob is, don't watch Scoob. Oh boy. Do you remember, there was this, I guess this is kind of an ongoing thing, right? Everyone wants to have a cinematic universe like Marvel does. So, spoilers going ahead for Scoob here. If you don't want to hear spoilers about what the movie Scoob is about, skip forward 3 to 5, maybe even 10 minutes. Just be on your toes when you skip ahead to figure out what I'm talking about, because it might take me a while. But if you're still here, if you haven't skipped ahead yet, every movie studio wants to have their own cinematic universe now, right? So we have, DC Comics, they wanted the DC cinematic universe. Universal tried to get into it. They started the quote-unquote Dark Universe, which was supposed to tie all of their Universal monster movies together into one big cinematic universe. Space Jam 2, again, this is Warner Brothers, so, maybe it's kind of sort of related to Scoob, maybe not. Space Jam 2, there was a thing that leaked recently about how they're trying to make that into a cinematic universe. The leak for Space Jam 2 was The Mask, it was, Wicked Witch of the West, it was Joker from The Dark Knight, it was Voldemort from Harry Potter, all these stupid Warner Brothers properties together in this one movie. And now we have Scoob, which is kind of, I guess, a stab at establishing the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. So the first 20 minutes of Scoob is basically a crash course in Scooby-Doo history. It tells the story about how Scooby and Shaggy met, how they became friends, how Scooby and Shaggy met Fred, Velma, and Daphne, and how they started going on, mysteries, trying to figure out mysteries, being junior detectives and things like that. That's the first 20 minutes of the movie. It's just this really quick crash course. Here's how they met. Here's how they started investigating mysteries. Just boom, 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 boom. Real fast, real shallow, real surface level. They kind of skip over a pup named Scooby-Doo. They skip over all there's a whole sort of Scooby-Doo is a universe into itself. And they skip over a lot of the more interesting lore stuff, I guess you'd say. I don't know. I'm not that deep into Scooby-Doo lore. Anyway, the point is, literally, I look down at the runtime at exactly 20 minutes. Aliens show up. By 25 minutes, Scooby and Shaggy. This isn't even covering the really stupid part of this movie. There's also weird product placement in this movie and weird celebrity cameos. And I know Scooby has had celebrity cameos in the past. But they say they say Walmart by name. They say I think there's a brand of soda they say by name. Simon Cowell is in this movie, and he's a big driving force, probably around, we'll say, the 15-minute mark here. We're timing out this opening history of Scooby-Doo. At around the 15-minute mark, we're at the point where Mystery Inc. has been established, and Fred wants to fix up the Mystery Machine. This is the big impetus for what sets the movie off. And what they end up doing for some reason is they bring in Simon Cowell to evaluate what their next step should be. And he looks really weird. He looks pseudo-realistic, whereas everyone else is cartoon characters. And basically Simon Cowell says that Scooby and Shaggy are dead weight. They're weighing down Mystery Inc. and that Mystery Inc. would be better without Scooby and Shaggy. So this leads Scooby and Shaggy, they get mad, they leave, and then they get abducted by aliens. Except it's not really aliens. There are aliens, but what they actually got abducted by was the Blue Falcon, which is another Hanna-Barbera property. And from there, from this 20-minute mark, the whole movie essentially becomes about the Blue Falcon. And Scooby and Shaggy sharing an adventure with the Blue Falcon across the wider Hanna-Barbera universe. Obviously, if you've seen previews, you know that Dick Dastardly is the main villain for this movie. He's from Wacky Races. They kind of reference Wacky Races. They reference Muttley. Captain Caveman shows up at one point, voiced by Tracy Morgan. It's this weird hodgepodge where it doesn't feel anything even remotely like Scooby-Doo. They are so thirsty to have a cinematic universe that's just what the movie's about. And everybody acts irrationally for no reason, just to set up the fact that they need a plot. It manufactures fake drama between Scooby and Shaggy, between Scooby, Shaggy, and the mystery team. It is such... I don't want to say it's a terrible movie. I mean, I guess it is. No, it's a terrible movie. It's not a terrible movie because of the cinematic universe stuff. It's also just a really poorly told story. Like I said, a lot of things happen very conveniently. I believe there's a point, I think it's after Captain Caveman shows up, actually, where, Blue Falcon takes Scooby and Shaggy basically into prehistory times where there's cavemen. And that's where they meet Captain Caveman. And there's this whole gladiatorial arena battle. And where Freddy and Velma and Daphne meet back up with Scooby and Shaggy is here at this arena. And the Mystery Machine pulls up. And Shaggy literally says out loud, "How did you get here?" And it's never it's just kind of brushed off oh, somehow Fred got here. Where is here? It's some underground lost world or something. I don't even necessarily remember where it is, but it's implied to be almost impossible to get to, a place where the Mystery Machine should not be able to go, and somehow it got there. I think maybe that's supposed to be a trick by Dick Dastardly or something. It's not really Fred or something. I don't know. Like I said, spoilers. It's hard to remember because after a certain point, you just kind of check out on this movie because it just feels so nothing. It sucks. Straight up. Don't watch. Like I said, don't watch this movie. It's thirsty, it's greedy, it's not Scooby-Doo. Especially because they don't even try to hire the old actors, which is a weird thing. I know the live action Scooby-Doo movie, right? You can't get Frank Welker to voice Freddy. But they still do this weird thing in this animated movie where, it's not Matthew Lillard. It's not Frank Welker is in the movie, but he's not playing Freddy. This man has played Freddy since the character's inception. And he's not Freddy in this movie. They hire another big-name actor. They hire big-name actors for all of them. Even though Matthew Lillard was a big-name actor, he doesn't get to play Shaggy. It's a bad movie. It goes for cheap jokes. The animation isn't even necessarily that good either. It looks fine, but it just kind of looks like every generic CGI movie. Just watch Zombie Island again if you want a good Scooby-Doo movie. Watch the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. Those actually weren't bad, those were pretty all right. And they made some like weird, nice, cool, deep cuts that were like totally unexpected at the time. But this is just like, it is super surface level. It is very much, here's our big cinematic universe. It's Wacky Races plus Blue Falcon plus Captain Caveman. And I guess maybe Scooby-Doo is in there somewhere. It's a real bummer. Rick and Morty season 4 just finished. If you didn't know, they did this weird thing where they broke the season up into 2 halves. So you had the first 5 episodes, a month or 2 or 3 ago. And then they had the second half of season 4, just like, a couple weeks ago. And I wasn't really super impressed with the first half of season 4. It had a couple of good episodes towards the beginning, but, as the first half of season 4 wore on, it kind of got worse and worse and worse. And it culminated for me in an episode about a snake planet that was just absolutely like the dumbest thing I've ever seen from Rick and Morty or otherwise. And it was funny looking up, I was talking to a friend about the second half of season 4, and I was actually looking up this snake planet episode. And apparently it is one of the lowest rated episodes of Rick and Morty across the entire series. And that was in the first half of season 4. The second half of season 4 was almost universally amazing for me. It really felt like, Rick and Morty was back. And not only were they back, but they kind of changed a little bit, right? I talked about this, they did a little bit of this for the first half of season 4, but they really doubled down on it for like the second half of season 4 about sort of not making Rick into like this all-powerful jerk. I mean, he's still kind of a jerk, but they have these moments for him now where he's actually like a person. He's not this sort of, edgy, snarky, I hate everyone and everything forever kind of guy. He actually kind of just acts like a person for once in his life. He shows, affection towards Morty, towards Summer, towards Beth. He's kind of turning into a different person, a better person, someone who isn't so, I guess, toxic for the lack of a better word. And the season 4 finale, especially, really solidified that. The season 4 finale was about sort of like making Rick own up to a lot of mistakes. And for once in the entire series, he actually shows like a bit of genuine remorse over the things he's done and the things he's said to people. And he actually looks human for a moment. And that's incredible. So yeah, really enjoyed the second half of Rick and Morty season 4. If you fell off the series because of, how weird the fan base got, or, you realized something about these characters that you didn't like anymore, give season 4 a shot, especially the second half, the back 5 episodes. You might be pleasantly surprised. That's probably it as far as TV goes. I did marathon the entire Stream Archive series of Half-Life, but the AI is self-aware yesterday, or VR Half-Life, I guess you'd say. That was pretty fun. That's been like the big quotable thing on the internet in my circles for like the last month and a half. That was, I enjoyed it, but I feel like towards the end of Half-Life VR, the AI is self-aware, the jokes kind of started to run a little bit thin. It's kind of felt like they only had one note, and that note was starting to get a little old as they rounded the corner towards the finale of the game. But the first, we'll say like 3/4 of that was very enjoyable. Definitely give that a look if you haven't. And now we're on to, I guess, video games I've been playing. And, I've been playing more video games than I've been watching TV or whatever. I started playing Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy, just on a whim one day. I wanted something to play. Ended up finishing most of Crash Bandicoot 1 inside of like a weekend. Was actually like really surprised how short that game is. It's like 3 hours long. It always seems like such a long game in my mind, but it's, 2 to 3 hours long. Like it's nothing. That was still okay. I've since gone on to start Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. I'm probably about a quarter of the way through that game, maybe halfway. Cortex Strikes Back is all right. I think I played most of the way through the original PS1 version at some point, and I enjoyed that. Might skip Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, though. That's kind of where the series started going off the rails for me. But as far as 1 and 2 go, that's still pretty good. But, I still have my complaints about the way these games look. And I think I finally nailed down what it is I don't like. And it's they go a little bit too realistic. And a little bit too, I guess, like Hollywood realistic. Like the best way to describe this is sound effects. The original Crash Bandicoot it leaned very heavily on cartoon sound effects. That sort of Hanna-Barbera sound library, those old Looney Tunes sound effects, that was very much the sound canvas of Crash Bandicoot. And when it comes to the Insane Trilogy, they replaced all of those sound effects, all of those iconic, identifiable Hanna-Barbera sound library sound effects with punched up cinematic Hollywood versions that just don't sound the same. And that's a big bummer. That game just doesn't sound the way it should sound. And, that sort of vibe permeates through everything else. The lighting is a little bit too realistic. Crash Bandicoot himself does not need a fur shader. It looks a little bit uncanny valley in a way that's kind of gross. That game really needs to look more cartoony than it does. But, it doesn't really spoil anything. It's still playable. I just wish it looked and sounded a little better. With my final TSSC News payment, my cousin sort of talked me into buying the Master Chief Collection on Steam, because he wanted to play Halo multiplayer with me. And in the interim, until he eventually gets around to inviting me to play Halo with him, I've been playing through the campaign mode of Halo 2 Anniversary. I haven't really played Halo 2 probably since I first got my Xbox 360 back in 2006. So, it's been a fair few years since I've touched that game. Definitely more than 10. And I'm finding that I've kind of forgotten a lot about Halo 2, about the storyline and everything. I knew a lot of the basic beats and everything like that. But also Halo 2 Anniversary, they redo all the graphics, they redo all the cutscenes, they hired Blur Studio to redo all the cutscenes in nice, expensive cinematic CGI. And if you don't know, Blur Studios is kind of, that's where Tim Miller comes from. He directed Deadpool. They used to do all the cutscenes for Sega, for all the Sonic the Hedgehog games. They did cutscenes for Shadow the Hedgehog, some for Sonic 06. They did CGI for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They've been around for a long time. They're kind of one of the big third-party CGI production houses that are out there. And, the new cutscenes look incredible. They still use the original audio from Halo 2, but they sort of punched up the timing on a lot of stuff. So, all the jokes land a lot better. A lot of the tension is, better. It's just all around, the storytelling in Halo 2 feels so much better now. I used to really hate Halo 2's story, but here, it actually feels like it's working. I'm kind of getting into the story. Because it's just, the cutscenes are so much more better directed now. But unfortunately, the gameplay is still Halo 2. Which is to say that it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks a lot. Obviously, Halo 1 and Halo 2 had these really rushed, troubled development cycles that really kind of influenced the sort of level design they have. And it's felt way more obviously in Halo 2 than it is probably in any other Halo game ever made. It's a lot of the levels are a lot more narrow. They lock you into rooms really often and make you fight just, endless waves of enemies over and over and over and over and over again. And, this is things that Halo 1 also did, but it's 10 times worse in Halo 2. The very first time you encounter the Flood, the infection zombies, they lock you in this elevator sequence. It's this tiny little deathmatch arena that's like one ramp and, you know, just this tiny, tiny little room, and you fight flood zombies, the same 3 flood zombies for like 10 minutes. Because they just spawn them in like 3 at a time. You kill those 3, you wait a second, 3 more spawn in, you kill those, you wait a second. They just do this over and over and over and over for 10 minutes. And it is such a slog. And they do that a lot in this game. There's another section later on where you're also on an elevator and they lock you on the elevator and you have to fight more zombies again for another 10 minutes. There's directly following that, there's a section where you're driving through like this war zone and somehow the zombies can drive cars now. And, you know, there's zombies driving Abrams tanks that, you know, they swivel around and they aim at you and they blow your car. It's like straight off the map and you're dead in one shot from a zombie that you couldn't see that was somehow driving a tank. And it is the dumbest thing. It is aggressively stupid in a way that I do not enjoy. And like outside of the cutscenes, like one of the big problems I had with Halo 2 originally, something that stuck with me for a really long time that I still bring up even now, is that they kind of made the big bad aliens from Halo 1 seem a lot less scary. And that still is present in Halo 2. You know, the cutscenes may be way more better directed. You know, maybe the elites seem a lot cooler than they used to be in the CGI cutscenes, but they're still total dorks in gameplay itself. Something that keeps popping up in my mind that I'm trying to record a clip of so that I can tweet it out is when you're playing as the Arbiter. The Arbiter is one of the elites that you fought in Halo 1. That's the whole thing with Halo 2, is that now you fight as the guys, the enemies from the first game. Now you get to play as an elite. And you'll be rolling around levels with a squad of elites, and they'll get attacked by something, and suddenly one of them will cry out, "Brother, I have been punctured!" And it is the most stupid line I've ever heard in a video game. They are such dorks. This game ruined the elites. They are no longer cool. And it's because of stuff like that. And there's all these other lines. I can't really remember all of them. But they have like all this ridiculously dopey, like Shakespearean, like medieval knights. That's what they sound like. It's not as bad where they're like, you know, doth and thine, but they have this really dorky way of saying everything. And I keep thinking about, "Brother, I have been punctured." And it's just like, oh no. Oh, this is stupid. Why did you do this? It was better when they didn't speak English. Why do they just sound like dopes? Why can they speak English? They don't even have human mouths. They have these weird, like, bug arm things that don't... Halo 2 sucks. But I'll probably finish Halo 2. I'm enjoying parts of it enough that when it gets really bad, when I get an elite talking about how he has been punctured, I still want to keep going, at least for now. I played some of it yesterday. Like, usually I play like 2 or 3 or 4 levels a day. You know, it's a good like hour and a half chunk to be playing. Yesterday, all I could stomach was the one level. That was the level with the zombie battlefield where zombies are driving tanks and jeeps and that's all I could stomach. And it was a really long level. Such a slog. Ugh. Halo 2. I also started up the Ratchet Clank Remake on the PS4 for some reason. I don't know. It was free on PS Plus like over a year ago. It's probably one of the first freebies I got from PS Plus. And, you know, I'd heard bad things about that game for years because it's not only a remake of the first Ratchet & Clank, it's also tied to that awful CGI movie that they released. And true enough, you know, everything to do with the CGI movie in that remake is terrible. You know, the whole movie is told sort of like in this weird flashback. Actually, like, come to think of it, that's something Halo 2 does too, in like a really weird twist. You start Halo 2 Anniversary, and the very first cutscene you get in that game is from Halo 5. And it's one of the guys from Halo 5 talking to the Arbiter about the Master Chief. And the Arbiter's like, "Yes, I knew the Master Chief. Here is how we first met." And then it starts the Halo 2 story. It is the weirdest thing. Anyway, Ratchet & Clank starts with Captain Quark in jail. and he's telling the story of the first game, or he's retelling the story of the first game, and that's how it connects to the movie, and that's how it remakes the first game. It's all Captain Quark's version of that story. Because spoilers, this isn't really a spoiler, because it's when you start the remake, it starts like this. You get to the end of Ratchet and Clank and you find out that Captain Quark is actually one of the villains. He's in leagues with the bad guy of that movie, or of that game. But, that's the very first thing you learn in the remake. Thanks for that, guys. The actual gameplay, though, isn't terrible. It sucks what they did to all the dialogue in that game. People won't shut up. Somebody is constantly in your ear, either talking about a mission objective you need to go do, a person you need to meet, or it's Captain Quark interjecting with quote-unquote funny dialogue, and I'm doing air quotes when I say that. But it still plays like a Ratchet and Clank game, which, as it turns out, play pretty good, and that game is, beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's almost impossible to tell the difference between the pre-rendered CGI movie cutscenes, from the actual theatrical movie, and the in-game graphics. The in-game graphics almost look that good. But, it plays fine. And, that game I played, I think part of the reason why I wanted to play the remake is a new version of PCSX2 came out, which is a PlayStation 2 emulator. And I ended up playing 2-3 hours of Ratchet and Clank 1 for the PS2 through the emulator. So it ended up being a good contrast between the two versions, to see, what all was changed, everything like that. A lot was changed in the remake, all the music was changed, all the dialogue was replaced. The remake in general is just a lot less funnier than the original game. And, I kind of blame that on the movie. But, some of it is just there's these weird fourth wall breaks. In Ratchet and Clank, the original, there's this point where you come to this handyman. And in the original game, Ratchet cracks a joke about, plumber's crack because he's bending over fixing something when they first meet him. In the remake, you meet this guy, and he's like, hey, haven't I seen you somewhere before? And Ratchet's like, no, not really. I think this is the first time we're meeting. And, this handyman guy's like, huh, weird. I'm pretty sure we've met before. Anyway, I'll see you in the next remake in 20 years. It's like, what? It's this weird sort of fourth wall break, and that's supposed to be the punchline, and it doesn't really land for me. It just kind of sucks. But again, like I said, it plays fine. It's pretty faithful in terms of adapting levels from the original Ratchet and Clank, and it seems like they have even more levels beyond that. I think I heard that they brought in levels from Ratchet and Clank 2, things like that. It plays fine. If you were worried about that remake, it's okay. It's not great, could be better, but shrug. It's fine for what it is. It's fine for a game I got for free, let's say. Played that new Chex Quest HD, which was given away for free on Steam, if you don't know that. That is also fine. I kind of expected it to be a train wreck, and instead it's mostly playable. It doesn't play as well as the original Chex Quest does. The controls feel kind of mushy, and the gravity's kind of floaty, and, the graphics look a little weird, but it also started its life as a fan game, I think. So, you kind of have to be a little bit softer with it. And again, it's a free game, so you can't really complain too loudly about the fact that it's not quite as good as the original Chex Quest. But it's good enough, I think, for something that you download for free off of Steam or whatever. It's okay. You could do worse. The only problem I have with it is that it's really short. I feel like the original Doom version of Chex Quest was a full episode, so, it was 10, 15 levels or something like that. And Chex Quest HD is 5 levels. And, you'll beat it inside of an hour. Which, again, sucks, but it's also a free game, so whatever. And they try and, extend the replay value by adding in all these alternate playable characters, and there's, supposedly a local multiplayer mode that I'll probably never get around to playing. But it's fine for what it is, who cares? Just today, I spent probably 3 or 4 hours marathoning a PlayStation 2 racing game called Road Trip, sometimes called Road Trip Adventure. I think in Japan, it's technically called Korokyu NG or something. I don't know. I found out about it through a Retropals stream. If you don't know who that is, that's Danny Cowan and his husband, Alex. They stream games. They're streamers now. Have been streaming for years. I subscribed to them many, many years ago on YouTube. They're always a good time to watch. And one of their most recent stream archives that went up on YouTube was for this PS2 Korokyu racing game called Road Trip that it released in America. It is notable for being something they call a CarPG, which means that, there's an overworld and there's NPCs and there's shops. You earn currency and it's fun. That's kind of it. It doesn't like control the best. But it's got a lot of character, it's got a lot of personality, it's got a lot of charming dialogue, and like the world that this game takes place in, the adventure mode, is just absolutely massive. I felt like I drove for 2 hours and I never found the edge of the world. It is probably one of the biggest open worlds on the PS2. And you kind of pay the price for that. The graphics aren't the best. There's a lot of what I would describe as sub N64 textures, just really, really blurry graphics, lots of jagged edges, very janky. But again, like I said, it has a lot of heart. It has a lot of charm. I really like the dialogue. It's a real good game to just kind of zone out to, if you're listening to a podcast or something. It's very slow. It's very gentle. It's very soft. You don't really have to think very hard about it. You can crack a smile at a weird piece of dialogue or whatever, and just it's good enough. I'd recommend seeking out Road Trip if you could. Obviously, I was emulating it, so it's not that hard to find if you know where to find things. Obviously, I played the latest 2 Sega Ages games, G-Lock Air Battle and Thunder Force AC, and man, I'm getting kind of bored of these Sega Ages games. That's like sort of a silver lining about not working for TSSZ anymore, is not really having to deal with these Sega Ages games anymore. G-Lock Air Battle is sort of like Afterburner 3, I guess you could call it, but it's a lot less interesting, it's a lot less thrilling, it's a little bit more simulation-based. And then Thunder Force AC is just, a horizontal scrolling shooter, which is a genre I hate. So, well done on M2 for sort of picking a little bit more obscure games that people might not have played before. But at the same time, there's kind of a reason people don't play games like G-Lock Air Battle very much. It's because they'd rather be playing Afterburner. And I'm sure Thunder Force has its fans. The Sega Genesis was kind of notable for having a lot of shooters and things like that. And, I think Thunder Force AC, which is, on consoles as Thunder Force 3 or Thunder Spirits in some cases, is probably one of the better Thunder Force games if I had to guess. I mean, I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea, And if M2 was going to keep picking games like this that weren't really my cup of tea, after Fantasy Zone and everything else, I'm kind of glad that I don't have to play them anymore, because I have not been feeling these Sega Ages games for a while now. It's something that I always wrote in my reviews, is that if you were a fan of these games, then yeah, this is probably like the best version of that game you're ever going to get. But I'm not a fan of these games. And after a certain point, you can only repeat yourself so much by saying, here's the features. It has a fake arcade cabinet mode. The emulation is very accurate. It has an extra bonus mode, and that's your lot. You can only say that so many times before it really starts to wear down on you. And it started to really wear down on me. I've been playing Yoshi's Island for some reason. It's been long enough where I haven't played Yoshi's Island in probably like 4 or 5 years now, that I just felt like playing Yoshi's Island. And I'm really glad that I waited so long to play it. With a game like Donkey Kong Country, where I replay it basically every year like clockwork, it's sort of almost like a tradition every Christmas. I have that game memorized backwards and forwards. It's almost like I almost play Donkey Kong Country exclusively off of muscle memory at this point, because nothing's a surprise in that game for me anymore. It never has a chance to age in my mind. It's always fresh, always there. I always remember everything about that game. And with Yoshi's Island, where I haven't played it in, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, it's kind of had a chance to age a little bit in my memory, where, certain things I don't remember quite as clearly. It's a little bit more fun like that, It's fun to forget things and then rediscover them. I've always loved Yoshi's Island, and I don't think Nintendo has ever reached those same heights ever again. There's never been a Yoshi game as good as the original Yoshi's Island. And it's fun to rediscover that game again, especially the Super Nintendo version. I think the last time I played Yoshi's Island was, if you remember, something I posted exclusively for Patreon donors was lost audio from a video I was doing about virtual console games, specifically virtual console games on the Wii U. Because, the virtual console had all these weird washed out visuals. They just weren't the best representations of those games. And I wanted to do a video sort of calling that out. And I did that centered around the Game Boy Advance version of Yoshi's Island. Because, that version added all these voice clips that I didn't like. It washed out all the visuals, which I didn't like. And that was probably the last time I played Yoshi's Island, which, that was probably, 2016-ish? So, it's been a while since I played Yoshi's Island, and it's been even longer since I played the Super Nintendo version of Yoshi's Island, where they don't give Yoshi a voice, because I hate Yoshi's voice. Apologies to, Tota K, or however you say his name. He's a musician that works at Nintendo, and he's also the voice of Yoshi. And I just cannot stand Yoshi's voice. That's all I have to say about that. So, having the Super Nintendo version of Yoshi's Island, thumbs up from me. I had grand plans to do 100% clear of Yoshi's Island, something I've never done before. And I got through the first 2 worlds doing that. And by the time I've hit the 3rd world here, I think I'm just about done with doing a 100% full clear of that game. And that's because there are so many ways that they can hide stuff in Yoshi's Island. So many ways that you can accidentally miss something important and not even know that it was there. So to get 100% clear in a Yoshi's Island stage, what you have to do, you have to collect, I think it's 20 red coins, 30 stars, and 5 daisy flowers. Daisy flowers sort of act like the dragon coins in the original Super Mario World. Red coins are, Mario staple red coins. And then stars are sort of like your health. Those determine how long you have to survive once Baby Mario gets knocked off of Yoshi. And it can go up to 30 seconds. And, getting all of those, getting 30 stars, 20 red coins, and 5 flowers is how you get 100% clear. And the way that they can hide things is, there can be invisible collectibles. They have, question sort of bubbles that you can hit that will give you items, and sometimes those can be invisible. So, maybe there's a flower that's in an invisible, item question bubble thing. There are Shy Guys that can carry things now. So, often you'll be playing a level and a Shy Guy will swoop down carrying a red coin, and you have to be, quick enough on the draw where you can shoot an egg at that Shy Guy to get the red coin. But sometimes what will happen is you get close enough to where the Shy Guy spawns that he swoops down off screen where you can't see him, and he'll leave the screen before you even knew he was there. And when that happens, that red coin is just gone. You have to replay the entire level again to try again. And I don't like that. It really feels like getting 100% clear in Yoshi's Island is something for, something to sell strategy guides for. Because it's so easy for them to hide things in random, obscure places where you'll never find them that I don't think I'm ever going to get 100% clear in that game. Because already I'm halfway through the 3rd world. And I've hit a string of like 3 or 4 levels in a row where I just can't find what I'm missing. I comb every inch of the level and I don't know what I'm missing. And it's because they can hide this stuff so well. So to get 100% clear, I'd have to play that game with like a FAQ in hand to tell me where everything is that I'm missing. And I'm not going to do that. That's not fun. I'd rather just play through the game normally, trying to go for as high a score as I possibly could. And it's also this sort of thing where the version of Yoshi's Island that I'm playing is on the Nintendo Switch Online app, the Super Nintendo app. So if I ever, for example, lose access to my Nintendo Switch Online subscription, that save file goes away. I don't have it anymore. I can't play the game anymore. So, it's kind of a volatile place to be trying to 100% clear a game anyway. And 10 years from now, when they shut down the Switch's online service, that save also just goes away. It's not going to be there for posterity forever. And, you can make arguments that maybe that'd also be the case if you had a cartridge. Cartridges don't last forever. Bit rot eventually claims them. Save game batteries eventually die. Things like that. And that's true, but also in our modern digital world, that doesn't have to happen anymore. I have emulator saves on my PC right now that are probably like 8 years old of, games I beat. We're talking like 2011, because they're just that old. Save files can and should now live forever. And they don't. And they should. And that's all I have to say about that. So yeah, I'll probably keep playing Yoshi's Island because I love Yoshi's Island. Top 10 game for me, but I don't think I'm going to go for the 100% clear. Which, also goes for everything else on the SNES Online Switch app or whatever you want to call it. What else? Played through Star Fox 2. Some Call Me Johnny did a video about it, I think, recently. I'd have to check and see if it was really that recent. It might have just been an older video of his that I saw, because I've missed a lot of videos from Johnny. I only subscribed to him like 9 months ago. But I ended up playing all the way through Star Fox 2 twice. Was it twice? I don't remember if I beat the game the second time. I think I got tired of it before I beat the game the second time or something. Anyway, I beat it once. I know that much. That game is okay. I think I might have talked about Star Fox 2 before on a podcast. My opinion hasn't changed on Star Fox 2. The final version they offered on the SNES Classic and they're offering now on the Switch Online app is fine. It's fun. It's better than the prototype we had for so many years. It does, as Johnny says in his video, it really helps to play it on higher difficulties because you end up seeing, a lot more. You fight a lot more enemies. You visit a lot more planets. It's just a much longer, more complex game in general. But, I enjoy it. That Star Fox 2 is okay. It would be nice if the frame rate was a little bit better, but, what can you do when it comes to a Super FX game? Panzer Dragoon Remake had a patch recently that tries to clean up a lot of it. It, tries to clean up the controls a little bit. It tries to enhance the graphics. There's now a performance mode where it tries to hit 60 frames per second. And it's definitely improved. It still doesn't feel quite as nice as Panzer Dragoon Orta did. But it does feel a lot better than it did at launch. It probably feels a little bit closer to the original Saturn version now. But with the performance mode, one of the problems that is now present in the game is that it uses a dynamic resolution scaler, which means that in order to hit 60 frames per second, it kind of dynamically turns down the settings on the game to be less graphically intensive, in order to, keep rendering time up to make sure the game renders quicker. And once you turn performance mode on, there is a bug where you cannot turn performance mode off again. It's stuck on forever. And what that means is that the game kind of looks like a blurry mess currently. And it still has frame rate problems, whether you're running in performance mode or not. There are parts where it doesn't run quite as nice as you'd hope. and now on top of that, it just looks blurry. But the patch definitely improved things. Hopefully they'll continue to improve things in the future. But I'd say that if you're gonna buy the Panzer Dragoon remake, like if you're dead set on it and you don't have it yet, maybe wait for the PC version, maybe wait for the PS4 version. They have announced those versions are coming soon. There's even a Steam page up for Panzer Dragoon remake right now. So I definitely say wait for those versions because they will look better, run better, hopefully be less buggy, but you never can tell. Streets of Rage 4 came out. That was probably one of the last review codes I got from TSSA News. It was kind of a belated code. Never did finish my review for that. I should get around to that here soon. What can I say? It's a Streets of Rage game. Not to spoil my forthcoming review too much, but if you've had problems with beat-em-ups in the past, Streets of Rage 4 doesn't really fix that. You still get trapped in these loops where... So, like, the main problem I have with beat-em-ups, speaking personally, is that, you'll be in the middle of, like, a combo of punching someone, and all of a sudden the enemy you're fighting just breaks out of stun lock and hits you out of your combo, and it feels, arbitrary and random and frustrating in a way that I don't entirely like. And, this was a problem in Final Fight, this was a problem in Double Dragon, this was a problem in the original Streets of Rage games, and it's still a problem in Streets of Rage 4. The same thing goes for, like, collision detection, right? Because the way these games are, this kind of almost isometric perspective of the battlefield, I guess you'd want to call it, sometimes it'll look like you're standing right next to an enemy and you'll go to punch them and you'll punch nothing because they're just standing just far enough to where your fists don't connect. That's also still a problem in Streets of Rage 4. And the music isn't super great. A lot of like the guest music they have is okay. But .mu or Lizard Cube or whoever has like an in-house musician, like Olivier something or other, and all of his tracks aren't very great. But at the same time, I say all this negative stuff about Streets of Rage 4, but it also still has that quality of a beat 'em up where as soon as you bring a friend along with you for co-op, it kind of transforms the whole game and it gets to be like, 10 times better. Because suddenly you have someone that can cover you when you get overwhelmed by too many enemies, things like that. And, in co-op, Streets of Rage 4 is probably the best beat 'em up I've ever played, which is not really a high bar to clear considering how tedious and slow and boring most beat 'em ups get to be. They're usually fun for about 10 minutes, and then you realize how repetitive they are, and it just turns into a slog. And, that's something that having a co-op buddy around helps with. I say this in my review a little bit, but one of the things that I think, really helped solve the beat 'em up, the modern beat 'em up as it were, was like, games like God of War, Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, they have defense moves. You can block, you can dodge, you can counter. This is something that old beat 'em ups did not have, and Streets of Rage 4 still does not have. If an enemy is coming for you, really the only defensive maneuver you have is to either hopefully get out of their way or jump over them. That's all you can do. And that's not an evolution of the genre. It kind of sucks. They could have done a better job with Streets of Rage 4, but it's better than I expected. You'll see in the review. I think the review actually is almost done. Or like the first pass on the review is completely done. I think I wanted to rewrite the review because I wasn't happy with the way it turned out. Well, yeah, maybe it needs to be written on a little bit more. I just looked at it. But you'll see when the review comes out, whenever that is, whenever I get off my butt and actually finish writing it and get all the screenshots together and everything else. And then I guess we'll close out talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake real quick, which is a game that I have not played a lot of in the last 3 weeks. And there's a reason for that. I was enjoying myself quite a bit with Final Fantasy VII Remake, more than I expected, actually. And I ended up playing up to the wall market section. I think that's actually where we left off last podcast. As I said, I met up with Tifa again as she was on her way into the wall market where we would meet Don Corneo. And since then, I ended up playing through the entire wall market section. It's actually like really huge. It goes on for like 4 or 5 hours or something. It's the space it takes place in isn't really that big, but the amount of stuff they make you do in the wall market is huge. There's Coliseum battles, there's strength training, there's this whole like fetch quest for the sauce. There's there's all this stuff that you do, and I got up to the point where you get to the famous scene involving Cloud cross-dressing to get into Don Corneo's mansion. I ended up going through the entire Don Corneo sequence, and after you talk to Don Corneo, there's a boss fight. And by this point, it was really late at night. I didn't really feel like going any further. I was kind of just hoping it would be a simple, easy boss fight. And it ended up kicking my butt really, 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 really badly. And it got to the point where it was like, I was exhausted. I wanted to go to bed. And it presented me with this option after I died. It said, game over. What do you want to do? Do you want to restart the boss fight? Do you want to restart from the last checkpoint? Or do you want to quit to the title screen? And I figured, okay, well, I don't want to restart the boss fight. I want to get away from the boss fight. So we'll load the last checkpoint. What I expected is that it would load me right before the boss fight. Because, what happens in the plot is that you end up in this sewer. And you have this little area to run around in before you get to the boss. And what I expected is that when I said load from last checkpoint, it would load me into this little sewer area right before the boss. What it actually ended up doing was setting me back more than an hour to before I'd done anything in Don Corneo's mansion, before I'd done any of the cross-dressing stuff for Cloud, all the way back to almost, we'll say, like the 3/4 mark of the wall market. There's a point where you visit someone that says they're going to give Aerith a dress. And you have to go do all these side missions while the dress gets ready. And then you meet her and she takes you to do the cross-dressing stuff, which is in itself, it's this big, long, like, dance battle QTE sequence that's completely amazing. And then you go to Don Corneo's mansion, which in itself is like a mini dungeon with, rooms to explore and thugs to fight. Like I said, it's like an hour, maybe even 2 hours of gameplay. And when I did load last checkpoint from this boss fight, it sent me all the way back to the point where I go pick up Aerith with her new dress. So I'd have to do the whole dance battle, I'd have to do the whole mini dungeon, and I looked at that and I said, nope, and I shut the game off. And that's where I left off in Final Fantasy VII Remake, probably a good 3.5, 4 weeks ago. I have not booted it up since, because it burned me. I could have finished that game by now, and I decided, no, thank you. I would rather play Crash Bandicoot, Ratchet & Clank, Halo 2, Yoshi's Island, Road Trip. Rather play all these other games than even think about Final Fantasy VII Remake for the time being. And that's my story. I'm going to put that in the reviews somewhere. Because, man, that's a bad checkpoint. That is the worst checkpoint I have ever seen in any game I have ever played. The only worst checkpoints are in those really, really old games from like the 90s, where they ask you to manually save every time. So like, if you're playing like classic Doom 2, not a modern source port, just the original Doom 2, and you're in a level for like 30 minutes and you die and you find out you didn't save and it starts you over from the beginning of the level again. That's the only instance where a checkpoint can be worse than this checkpoint situation in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And talking it over with people since then, they've told me that, maybe if I'd chosen to restart from the boss, then that would start me from where I wanted to be. It would have started me in that little zone right before the boss fight. I've had people tell me that if I load my save right now, that if I go back to the game as it is, because I just turned it off so suddenly, it'll actually load me into that area right before the boss fight. I won't have to redo all the Don Corneo Mansion stuff or anything like that. So we'll see. But I'm going to be house sitting for someone tomorrow for almost a week. So even if I wanted to investigate whether or not Final Fantasy VII Remake doesn't have a really bad checkpoint, which, it does, but if I wanted to check and see if it fixed the checkpoint, it's going to be a week. And obviously, it's already been weeks. I've known this for weeks. I could have just checked. I just haven't felt like it. Anyway, that's all that's on the docket for now. I think that's the end of the podcast for us, folks. I hope you are staying safe out there. I hope you are staying healthy out there. Let's all try to get through this together. And hopefully by this time next year, things will be better. They kind of have to be, right? I don't want to jinx it, but things will be better. Things will get better. This too shall pass. And so will this podcast. Bye.